Okay, we've got this ground down. This is all metal. We put a couple extra holes, 5/16 holes, so we can put plug welds. We're going to weld from the back side of some of these, from the front side of these, but wherever we're welding at, you know, if that's just painted, whenever it heats up and the welder hits it, it just burns the paint off. And that's what this weld through primer is. You grind that off, you put this weld through primer, and it helps for corrosion protection to keep it from rusting. So anywhere there's metal, we're going to have to put some of this weld through primer. So I want to coat both sides where this is metal. Anything that's metal that you're not going to be able to get to after you're done welding, you want to put this. For example, these flanges are going to be together. You won't be able to get in there with any type of primer after this is welded, so you want to be sure, and that's what this weld through primer is for. Just spray that way. We'll let that dry, and then we're ready to start welding. Okay, we allowed our weld through primer to dry. Now we're going to go ahead and set this up, and then Jake's going to start aligning these holes that we had up that we have pre-aligned it with. We're going to use the self-tapping screws to screw it back on, and then we'll start plug welding. It's got to fit in between these two panels, so you got to kind of slide it in. Gonna have to push here a little bit. Kind of like a puzzle. You gotta, there it goes. Okay, those two are lined up. Put those two in. This one also. Yeah, make sure, don't make another hole, but be sure to go in that same hole. Too tight. Okay. Alright, finally, we're ready to start welding things up. We got our filler panel on, outer Wheelhouse. We got our self-tapping screws in, it's all aligned, so we can start welding. I kind of mentioned about setting up your welder. You know, you follow the same process, getting it set up. But a few things I did want to mention before we start doing this. You may need a couple tools, like some vice grips or a body hammer. Now the self-tapping screws help push it up against this tight, But wherever you're welding, you want to make sure you're solid up against that. There may be some areas where you need to clamp it down right by the weld. That way it's as close to the flange as possible. They're close together. You don't want to weld with a gap in the center, the two panels. Maybe some areas where you can't do that. If it's up a little bit here, you're going to want to hammer that down to ensure that that's flat. So you probably have to clamp, hammer as we go to ensure that we've got make good welds. Now, plug weld is a pretty simple weld. You don't trigger it, you do it all in one motion. There's two ways you can basically do it. You can start at on the outside edge, weld the outside edge, and then spiral inward, or start on the inside and then spiral outward. I go from the outside in, but it's just a preference, whichever way you like to do that best. But it's you start it, make the complete weld, and then you're done. Unless you start having, you blow a hole or something, then you may have to trigger it in. But usually you don't trigger these in. And still, to kind of manage your heat, you might weld one here, here, come down. Alternate your welds where you're not welding in the same area all the time. So, gives you a basic overview. We'll go ahead and get started. And remember, there's some on this back side that I'm going to weld as well, also. So I'm going to weld these, and then I'll be welding some up on the inside. Then you take your clamp off. That's what you want, something like that. It's going to be round. You don't want to see any of the hole on the outside edge. You want to make sure all that is covered up. There's no pinholes or anything. So I'll just go ahead and continue. Like I said, I'm going to move around and I'll weld each location like that. Okay, we've got the Wheelhouse put on this Mustang. Got all the plug welds welded up. Got them ground. We ground them a little bit. It's not completely necessary to grind them, make them real smooth, because this is all going to be covered with the quarter panel. But we did go ahead and grind them and dress them up a little bit. And then we went to the other flanges where the quarter panel is going to go. We did any welding repairs necessary on those, and then we ground those. Now there's some areas you do want to make sure that they are flat. For example, the quarter panel is going to fit on the outside of this, so we made a few welds that we needed, and we ground that smooth, because if you got a nugget that's sticking out, it's going to it's not going to allow the quarter panel to align properly. So you want to make sure anywhere that where the quarter panel is going to sit on top of it aligns properly. Now that we got all that done, what we're going to do, where we ground the metal, like in this area here, we want to treat that. We're going to put some self-etch primer and respray. We're going to put a little undercoating. Actually, we got some bed liner, that we're going to try to spray on it and see how that works. And that's not a necessary step. You do want to protect the metal. You don't want to leave it metal like that, because that'll start rusting. So you do want to get it primed, but we thought we'd go ahead and spray some undercoating or bed liner on it, just for a little sound deadening. And then what we're going to do is, the flanges we've got ready, we're going to, if we're not going to be able to get to it after we're done putting the panel on, for example under here, it'd be hard to get right there because the panel is going to be on there. So areas like that, we want to put the weld through primer so that it provides the corrosion protection, and then we'll put the quarter panel on. And if we areas that we can get to, obviously we can finish that out after the quarter panel's on with the primer and paint. Next step is to treat the metal that's going to be covered up by the quarter panel and prepare the flanges with weld through primer. Now on some of these areas, on this front area around the wheelhouse up under there, we're going to use some adhesive on that. So the areas that are going to be adhesive or where you're going to be welding need to be metal. Now you put the adhesive straight over the metal. It's required to go straight on the metal. But you got to, we'll show you how to spread that out so that you have the corrosion protection